Commencing transmission. Engaging scramblers. Proxy chain initialized. And now, live from his hidden base at the Earth's core, the future ruler of Earth, Doomcock.
Greetings, Legionnaires, Nemeses, villains, and future subjects. I am Dicta Van Doomcock, the future ruler of Earth, broadcasting from my secret base at the Earth's core to review the second half of Season 1 of the Orville. In my first review, I pronounced Star Trek dead thanks to the cretins at Star Trek Discovery who rammed the franchise straight into a planet of shit at warp 999 and pronounced the Orville as the heir to the Star Trek throne. But as I stand before you today, I am a very pissed off overlord indeed. For a change, I am not pissed off at the show being reviewed, but at the critics of the show who consistently promote and apologize for the demented debacle that is Star Trek Discovery, while viciously slamming the Orville, a show that is vastly superior to Star Trek Discovery in every single conceivable way. At this point, I would like to focus on the latest cheap potshot published in the otherwise laudable Rolling Stone, a sidebar article titled, "Is This the Sad Last Act of Fall TV?" This article begins promisingly enough, rightfully pointing out how network TV shows have fallen away in quality and relevance from the pack of excellent television shows being produced by cable channels like FX, AMC, and TBS, and pay services like HBO and Showtime. Most of what the networks produce these days is mediocre Drek. That is beyond dispute. To quote the article, Fall 2016 had its contenders, from This Is Us to The Good Place. But with streaming and on-demand to mess with, the old-school TV time-space continuum is looking less and less like the place to build a new hit. What can it possibly mean that 2017's idea of a freshman smash is the Will and Grace revival? A valid point. But then the uncredited writer/feckless assassin who wrote this article goes on to conclude, the Orville, Seth MacFarlane's Star Trek homage, is a dreary ego trip that lets MacFarlane command a starship while foxy ladies tisk at him. If this is what a fall hit looks like, beam us up. I'll beam you up all right, asshole, and beam you right into a wormhole that transports you into a parallel universe where CBS All Access is the only channel left, and you can watch all the bland, idiotic Star Trek Discovery you want, along with Young Sheldon, Hawaii Five-0, The Next Degeneration, and the MacGyver reboot. When you want to tear your own eyeballs out and are begging for some Orville, don't come crawling back to me.
People are weird. I'm no MacFarlane fan personally, but objectively I see that the guy has produced a lot of successful shows. Where does all this hatred come from?
Doomcock has no idea. I don't know whether the establishment critics in Hollywood hate MacFarlane for being too successful or wearing too many hats. Hollywood has a history of reviling and shunning people who are too broadly talented. Look what they did to Orson Welles after Citizen Kane. They called him the Wonder Boy, slammed him at every opportunity, and though it took years by the time Hollywood was through with poor Orson Welles, he was reduced to shilling Parmesan wine boxes in cheesy commercials.
We will sell no wine before it's time. Sadly for Orson, weighing, I guess, 800 pounds by then, any time was the right time. Let's see, what time is it? 7 a.m.? It's time.
Yeah, they were trying to class up their mass-produced wine boxes on the back of a degraded cinematic genius, a film pioneer. That's what the Hollywood establishment did to Orson. And now, by God, they're trying to do it to Seth MacFarlane. He's a talented actor, writer, producer, comedian, singer. Probably paints, too.
But you do all of those things yourself. I've heard you singing in the shower, just like Bobby Darin.
Shh! Don't let that get out, or Hollywood will be on my ass too. So, the source of their hostility may be that he's a hyphenate talent. Or it may be as simple as CBS has deep pockets and extensive connections, and so they're behind this critical backlash against the Orville. You've seen this with Disney and Star Wars: The Last Jedi. The critics have been singing the praises of that tragic misfire, that final straw that broke the franchise's back. 90% fresh according to critics, 49% fresh according to the rest of the people not in Disney's power. So it well may be with the Orville. How greatly must it irk CBS to have their flagship franchise destroyed by incompetence and greed, while the Orville shows them exactly how Star Trek is done. It makes me laugh to imagine CBS wailing and rending their garments as they watch the Orville become a hit, despite all their bought hit pieces and all the toadying critics they've got stashed in their pockets. But Doomcock is in no one's pocket. Doomcock calls things as he sees them. Damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead. You fucked up, CBS. You killed the horta that laid the golden eggs, and now the Orville is drinking your milkshake.
You see, CBS? McFarlane was the smart one. He knew what you had in the ground. Where was your Star Trek staff when McFarlane was suckling at the Star Trek teat? Who was nursing your hack writers? A band of sows who knew nothing about Star Trek. See, if you have a franchise, and I have a franchise, and I have a straw, see, and my straw reaches all the way across the airwaves and starts to drain your franchise, I drink your franchise. I drink it up.
Indeed. McFarlane has drunk CBS's milkshake, and they can't stand it. So the long knives are out, and once again Doomcock enters the fray to defend this criminally underrated inheritor of the Star Trek crown, the Orville. So let us begin my review where I left off, with Episode 6, entitled simply Krill. Now this episode possessed in spades what Star Trek Discovery completely lacks: fun! In this episode, Captain Mercer and his pal Malloy don holographic disguises and infiltrate a Krill warship to retrieve a copy of their holy book, the Ankh-Hana. Overall, this is an excellent episode. It moves quickly, and it sets up a classic Trek conundrum when Mercer discovers that this ship is going to bomb a Union colony. The easiest solution would be to blow the ship up, and yet Mercer discovers that there are a number of Krill children on board, and so the issue arises. Is it moral to kill innocents to save innocence? This has always been a moral issue in wars historically. Most recently, the deaths of non-combatants by drones overseas conducting so-called surgical terrorist strikes comes to mind. Clearly, this is the analogy McFarlane wishes to explore here. Mercer finds a workaround to save the children while killing the rest of the crew, and he takes them on board and transports them to safety. In response to this mercy, the teacher he befriended on board assures him that now he will have radicalized the surviving children, only perpetuating the hatred of the Krill for the Union.
Oh, screwed if you do, screwed if you don't. So for his act of mercy, he just stirs up more hatred. People are weird. And apparently so are Krill.
Yes. In an obvious parallel to the effect our drone strikes have overseas, radicalizing families who lose loved ones as collateral damage, McFarlane raises, in the best Star Trek tradition, the double bind of military action. In killing the enemy, you may simply be creating more enemies. It is not an issue with an easy solution, and in this sober ending, McFarlane doesn't try to give us a pat answer. He behaved in the best Union tradition, and he could have done nothing other than that.
Are you saying that Mercer is an actual character who has things he would and wouldn't do?
That's right, Harvey. Unlike the abomination Star Trek Discovery, the Orville actually has characters, with characteristics that behave in certain ways consistently.
Jeez. Star Trek Discovery is good at ripping off other Star Trek series. How come the Star Trek Discovery writers don't just watch the Orville and rip it off?
Because they're incompetent hacks who hate Star Trek and are just looking to draw a paycheck until they find their next gig. And if CBS is dumb enough to hire these nimrods, it's their fault they have an empty milkshake cup. Now, this episode is not without flaws. While the hologram conceit is a good one, and we've always had to swallow the idea that a universal translator would match mouth movements to words, I have to give all that a pass. The idea that these two guys could just go into an alien culture, knowing nothing of the conventions, the catchphrases, the mores, the methods of these completely alien people without being detected, really stretched credulity. Imagine, if you will, being an average Joe who watches every CSI and every Law and Order, and having to infiltrate a Star Trek fan club. How impossible it would be to credibly discuss Star Trek with experts. And you're all human! Imagine trying to pass yourself off as an alien knowing diddly squat about their culture. The way they fumbled around for comic effect was entertaining and engaging, but I never really thought that they'd be able to pull this off. It seemed like a daring mission that could have had a great deal of dramatic weight if taken seriously. This would have been an outstanding episode of Star Trek or Next Generation, but as it was more of a light-hearted romp than a thrilling heist episode. The writers should have done some kind of mental implant that had background about the Krill to at least make it plausible. They still could have had funny problems arise, big holes in the implanted database, misinformation, and it would have been that much more plausible.
So why aren't you being harder on this? Wouldn't you eviscerate Star Trek Discovery if they pulled something like this?
No. There are plot holes in Star Wars, in the Indiana Jones series, James Bond. There are always plot holes, but we only notice them when we aren't being entertained. It's like watching a good magician on stage who is skilled in diverting our attention. With a lousy magician, we see all too easily the dove up the sleeve or the clumsy forced card on the rigged shuffle. No, the Orville is entertaining and it's got heart. So while Doomcock notes the flaws to be completely fair and objectively critical, for Doomcock is never a fawning hack. Nevertheless, Doomcock truly enjoys this show, the only version of Star Trek that we have left. Now, the next episode was called Majority Rule. This episode echoes an episode of Black Mirror, postulating a society where everyone is networked on social media and everyone's fate is decided by how many upvotes and downvotes they receive from their peers. Everyone goes around with a badge and a rating device, and just like on Twitter or Facebook, if you're caught doing something the public disapproves of, the impact can be instant and devastating. So of course, while on an undercover mission to the planet Sargus 4, crazy-ass Lamar does a grinding dance on the statue of a beloved historical figure and gets caught on video. His performance goes viral, and he's arrested after receiving a buttload of downvotes. So the problem becomes, unless Lamar can convince enough people to give him upvotes on a reality show, he'll be subjected to treatment. Basically, a kind of lobotomy. So they have to save him.
Yeah, I think this premise was done better on Black Mirror.
I agree. This episode is pretty compelling so long as you haven't seen Nosedive, the episode of Black Mirror starring Bryce Dallas Howard. This episode was alternately hilarious and chillingly plausible. Watching this woman's life unravel because of a simple mistake on global social media is horrific. Like much of Black Mirror, it's hard to just enjoy this series because it hits too close to home. Devastatingly effective, Nosedive makes Majority Rule pale by comparison. This is an unfair comparison, perhaps, although given that Nosedive had already aired long before the Orville debuted, they perhaps should have looked at what they were doing ahead of time and beefed it up a bit.
Well, to be fair, the Orville had the whole lobotomy angle. In Black Mirror, she wasn't officially in trouble. She was just an outcast that was shunned, so it's a bit different.
It is. But still, this was just an unfortunate confluence of influences, and this episode does not compare favorably to Nosedive. That said, watching Lamar do his thing was hilarious and in character, and there was a sense of genuine concern for his fate. I was again entertained, although I felt the ending was weak. In the conclusion, Isaac is able to hack into the master feed, and he broadcasts sympathetic videos of Lamar at the last minute to create empathy for him across the planet and inspire the population to give him upvotes, thus saving him. This is an okay ending, but really, the inescapable problem here is this. Why doesn't Isaac simply hack the vote count? He is a machine directly interfacing with machines. It's an easy and more certain solution to simply change the numbers than it is to feed videos to people hoping it'll sway them. Hell, it happens all the time with voting machines here. Anyone who believes that the government, out of the goodness of their hearts, isn't screwing with machine tallies that have no tangible paper trails are nuts. The history of power proves that if those in power can get away with something, they will sooner or later. So that was a weakness of this episode. Not one of the best, but still light years better than the best episode of Star Trek Discovery.
Is there a best episode of Star Trek Discovery?
No, it was hyperbole. They are all wretched failures, so it's a low bar. But the Orville easily clears it on their worst day. That said, the Orville does have highs and lows, and a definite Orville high comes with Episode 8, Into the Fold. In this episode, Dr. Finn and her 2 kids are in a shuttle en route to an amusement planet, and they're being piloted by the android Isaac. The kids are brats, constantly fighting, the younger one excited by the trip, and the older one too cool for school, above it all, and just wanting to play his game. When Finn learns that Isaac is going to be their pilot, her reaction is, oh crap. And indeed, Isaac's observations about the kids and her parenting skills are devastatingly candid. Isaac observes,
"The older, less intelligent one seems to take pleasure in inflicting damage on his younger, weaker sibling. On my planet, when a program is not functioning properly, it is deleted. If you wish, I will vaporize them."
This episode does a great job of not pulling any punches and not diluting its concept by watering down Isaac's interactions with the kids. Isaac is a credible android, like Data, but with even less understanding of humans and what is acceptable human behavior, as we saw when he cut off Malloy's leg as a practical joke. By example, when the shuttle crashes on a forested moon, splitting in half and separating Finn from Isaac and the kids, the older kid reassures his brother, "Don't worry, she's still alive," to which Isaac calmly replies,
"At the moment, that is a baseless assumption."
By the way, I'd just like to interject that the shuttlecraft on the planet is pretty thrilling. The hull splitting, Finn falling away, the front half crashing, it was pretty damn spectacular.
Yes, a fantastic job with that. The Orville never wuzzes out on the danger element. Frequently, the show places characters in more viscerally dangerous situations than Star Trek ever did. It pushes the physical dangers farther. At least it feels that way to me. Kelly tied up and beaten by the religious nut, the scientist horribly aged to death in that time ray, Malloy's severed leg. It just pushes things that much farther. Indeed, in one respect, this episode may have pushed things a little too far when Finn kills her captor to escape. After her crash, she is retrieved by a native of the planet and locked in a room, presumably to keep her safe. There's a plague on the planet, turning everyone into violent assholes, so here's the conundrum. He did indeed save her from them by taking her in, but he is essentially keeping her locked up. So what to do? In a normal Star Trek episode, the Doctor would have talked with her captor, convinced him of the error of keeping her, or simply escaped. But again, the Orville steps things up and has her, a doctor, kill this poor bastard to escape. Now granted, at this point she knew she had to get back to her kids and was desperate, but still, that's some cold shit there, straight up, yo.
Yeah, I was shocked. That was pretty harsh. And there isn't even any reflection or soul-searching or official inquiries afterward? You'd think they'd have a Union official investigation into the Union officer killing an alien native, but no, none of that.
Even as I find that part disturbing, I admire the balls it took to do that. That again is not your dad's Star Trek. Isaac starts out completely oblivious to the kids' feelings, but credibly, as the show goes on, he learns how to best interact with them, and has, by the end of the episode, acquired a deeper understanding of and appreciation for not only the kids, but I suspect humanity. From start to finish, Into the Fold is a stellar episode with a genuinely moving moment when Finn welcomes Isaac into her family fold, and it provides more evidence that with the Orville, McFarlane has put CBS and Star Trek Discovery to shame.
I really enjoy the way they show the crew in unguarded moments, listening to Barry Manilow while they fix the engines and singing karaoke. It makes them so much more real and relatable for humans who do those sorts of things. Me, I don't know Manilow from a lug wrench, but I observed how you laughed with delight during that scene.
I did not laugh with delight. I chuckled, wryly.
You laughed with delight, you big phony. Whatever, you big baby.
Still, you're quite correct. I say it again. The brilliant innovation the Orville has over Star Trek is the way it brings the 20th century into the 23rd century. These people listen to classic rock like we do, as people in the future would. It's not all jazz and Shakespeare. It's Manilow and Total Eclipse of the Heart. It's like on Babylon 5 when Garibaldi was watching Looney Tune cartoons and laughing his ass off. Our pop culture isn't just going to vanish. We have recording technology. Generations to come are going to still laugh at Wile E. Coyote going over a cliff and blowing up. Again, I say it, the Orville is Star Trek without the big stick up its ass. But I digress. Let's discuss the next episode, Cupid's Dagger.
Uh-oh, here we go.
This episode pretty much sucked. Sorry, but it did. It still had a lot of what makes the Orville great. Great characters, awesome look. But the plot let us down badly because, in atypical fashion, the writers willfully did not follow the fascinating premise to its logical conclusion. They're usually great about this, but not this time. In this episode, Darulio, the nasty blue alien that Kelly was caught sleeping with in the first episode, returns to the Orville to negotiate a treaty between two alien races. I'll just get right to the point here. It turns out that Darulio gives off pheromones that basically turn everyone into lovesick sex slaves. It was frankly extremely disturbing to me, watching not only Kelly fawning all over Darulio, but also turning Mercer gay. Mercer is also infatuated with Darulio and is vying with Kelly for his attention. Harvey, I simply could not enjoy this episode because the whole time I was seeing clearly that this was essentially rape.
I think that's a bit harsh, don't you? It was a natural biological function of his species.
This premise is flawed on so many levels it's hard to even know where to start. Firstly, Darulio is not innocent or naive. He knows the effect that he's having, and he takes advantage of it. So essentially, Darulio is using chemical means, natural or not, to seduce others who have no say in the matter. That the crew does not know this about Darulio's race, that they have this effect, stretches credulity. This is not a first contact. This is a race the Union obviously interacts with. If this was an effect his race has on humans, it would definitely be documented and there would be warnings. There would certainly be laws about this. You can't simply go around drugging unwary people with roofies or pheromones and sleep with them and not be said to be committing rape in some form.
It does seem that in this one, McFarlane basically decides, hey, I want to go for laughs in this one, having Mercer act like a girl in love rather than examine the ethical implications of this idea.
It's cheap, and it's not worthy of the Orville. Not only do they not examine the ramifications of this, but as it turns out, this blue bastard pulled that shit with Kelly, and that's what broke up Mercer's marriage. And yes, the smarmy little shit just skates at the end with no punishment, no official action taken, just an, oh well, my race does things differently, see ya. But here's the thing, my rights extend only so far as they infringe on the rights of others, and I think one of the most fundamental rights that exists is the right not to be stopped by a sleazy blue horn dog. In other words, my rights extend at least 6 inches away from me at all times.
Yeah, but it's the same deal with women, right? If a woman used drugs to get you to sleep with her, isn't that just as bad?
It's worse, because then we might have a little Doomcock running around the base.
Holy crap. Is that how that works? When a boy and a girl like each other very much or use roofies on each other?
We'll talk about it later. I really hated this episode, and I have to give it a fail. But it's not the end of the world. After all, Star Trek had Spock's brain and the way to Eden. Accidents happen, so let's move on to a happier topic. Episode 10, Firestorm. Firestorm kicked ass. It's probably my favorite episode of the Orville. Essentially, Alara momentarily freezes in a moment of crisis during a plasma storm, and a crewman dies. This rattles her to the core, so much that she attempts to resign. Mercer rejects her resignation, and at this point, some really weird and horrific things begin to happen. A really messed up clown starts haunting her. There's a giant spider loose that eats Malloy. Finn is suddenly a kind of Dr. Mengele, running a torture chamber instead of a sickbay. People are vanishing, and Isaac is hell-bent on killing her and destroying the ship. It turns out, spoiler, that Alara has trapped herself in a holodeck program designed to confront her with her worst fears. Mercer and Kelly can only watch helplessly as Alara, locked into the program for its duration, struggles to overcome her inner demons. Start to finish, this episode kicks ass. Sheer brilliance. There's just nothing I can say to knock it, and really nothing in particular to single out as excellent. It was all excellent. My favorite episode. And so I'll just give it 5 stars and move on to New Dimensions, the 11th episode.
This was a pretty good episode, I thought. I liked the dual meaning of the title. The New Dimensions not only include a region of 2-dimensional space, but hidden depths in Lieutenant Lamar, who, as it turns out, had been hiding the fact that he's brilliant in order to be liked by people.
Yes, I recently watched a YouTube video that pointed to scientific research that reveals intelligent people generally have fewer friends than less intelligent people. It appears that now science acknowledges what Victor Hugo maintained all along. Popularity? Why, it is the very crumbs of greatness. Doomcock, being an evil genius, has lived a life of isolation and brooding, so he understands this truth.
I figured you were alone because of the evil part, not the genius.
Doomcock is alone for both reasons. Still, I have you, Harvey Cthulhu, and my robots, and the dinosaurs and lizard people of this subterranean savage land, as well as all my subscribers and supporters at Patreon. So this year, Doomcock has been less alone than ever. But it's true. Intelligent people walk a lonely road, and Lamar, understanding this, preferred to play dumb and have lots of friends rather than embrace his potential. Mercer, too, is confronted by his limits in a very incisive, parallel plot line when he learns that Kelly pulled strings to get him command of the Orville. This multi-level plotting is yet another example of how the Orville kicks the crap out of Star Trek Discovery, as it often has 2 or 3 plots per episode when Star Trek has none. None that is coherent beyond the level of this happens, then this happens, the childish scrawl of an imbecile on the wall. In the end, Lamar saves the ship from being trapped in the 2-dimensional region of space and accepts promotion to the chief engineer position. A satisfying resolution to an interesting premise. And that leads us to the final episode of the season, Mad Idolatry. This episode explores the ramifications of violating the Prime Directive better than any Star Trek episode, in my opinion. Kelly Grayson leads a landing party to a planet populated by a primitive society. While there, she intervenes to save a child, healing the kid with advanced technology. This is witnessed, and Kelly is taken to be a god. Now, the thing about this planet is, it exists in a kind of phasic time warp, appearing in our universe every 11 days, and between appearances in our universe, 700 years pass on the planet. And so we get to watch this planet evolve, embracing Kelly as their deity.
Well, we've seen similar things on Star Trek. The results of Prime Directive interference.
Yes, but we've never gotten to see it in real time. It's fascinating and moving to watch this planet move through the evolution of religion, from small cult to widespread fascist tyranny a la the Inquisition. Kelly goes back to the planet against Union orders and tries to put things right with the religious leader. But when she leaves the head of the church convinced of the truth, a power-mad priest murders their pope to hide the secret truth and perpetuate the corrupt power of the church. So the next time the planet phases in, the planet is at a level of technology comparable to ours and is being torn apart by the conflict between dogma and enlightenment. The Kelly religion has persisted, much to Kelly's dismay and personal guilt. In a last stab to fix things, Isaac volunteers to go down to the planet and phase out with it. He will spend 700 years on that world.
Ah, what a mind bender, huh?
It is indeed. But he's an android. His perception of time is different. He has no conventional frailties like human attachment, fear, loneliness. For him, it's an interesting experiment, and for us, it cements the Orville as the torch-bearer of popular science fiction following the death of Star Trek. True, The Expanse is the very best sci-fi show on TV right now, and may well be the best of all time. But it is more of a drama and less of an adventure in the Star Trek tradition, and so I make that distinction. Right now, the Orville is the best at what it does, and the Expanse is the best at what it does. Isaac here is acknowledged and shown to be vastly alien to us. What would to us be an unthinkable sacrifice is, to Isaac, an interesting assignment. See you in 700 years. The very ending is so sweet and poignant, Doomcock must salute it. 11 days and 700 years later, the planet returns, and the aliens, now a spacefaring race, bring Isaac back to the Orville. The enlightened aliens, knowing Kelly is no god, are still quietly awed with delight at meeting the woman who so enriched their history and mythology. Their gratitude and quiet dignity was incredibly moving to Doomcock, and a more than fitting end to the show. Unfortunately, this episode ends with a disappointing note. When Kelly concludes that she and Mercer can't get back together, despite the revelation of why she slept with that blue-skinned rapist. Doomcock does not object to that as a critic, so much as a fan. I would like to have seen them get back together.
Well, there's always season 2.
There is. Thank you, Fox. And so, Doomcock gives the Orville Season 1 4 stars. And Doomcock has some news for fans of this channel. I have opened an online store at Zazzle.com. Doomcock is asking fans of this channel to help us stay on the air. YouTube is refusing to monetize us, even though we've met the requirements and are growing every day, so we're not making a dime here. If you could take a moment to click on the link in the description below the video and buy a coffee mug or a t-shirt, that would really help Doomcock out. We've got posters, beer steins. The list of available products is growing every day, so check us out at Zazzle.com/DVD Shoparama. And if you don't see any products, be sure to turn off the content filter at the bottom of the screen. For some reason, they seem to frown upon my name.
I wonder why.
Me too. Also, I'm posting our podcast and tons of exclusive content for my supporters at patreon.com/Doomcock. So if you can part with $3 a month to help Doomcock conquer the world, head over there and take a look as well. And so, please click the subscribe button and set your notifications bell on to be alerted when I post new videos. And from Harvey and the robots and all of us here at the center of the earth, thanks for watching and stay angry.
Ha 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 ha.